In this video, I'm going to go over the top 5 numbers that you must track as an online coach. No matter if you're just starting off your business, especially when you're scaling past 100K a month, and you definitely need them when you're at the 250K, 500K mark, and etc. moving forward, right? So a lot of times, before I even hop into the video, a lot of times I see people not tracking their numbers. And so now you're thinking it's a close rate problem when it's really a show rate problem. You never are going to understand what the bottleneck is if you're not tracking anything, if you don't have the right tracking system, right? For you guys that are new here, my name is Jasmine. I have been partnering up with online coaches, creators to help them build your backend with their sales, their marketing, their ops. Anything to do with just running your business on the backend aspect. It doesn't have anything to do with your direct coaching offer and what you actually coaching your clients. I'm your girl. That's why I've been helping out my clients do. Now, with that being said, let's hop right into the video. And what is that first number? So the first number that you must track, and I know this might seem obvious, but a lot of people that I work with, they don't even have this number. But that first number is going to be your close rate. And the reason why I'm saying number and not metric, let me just speak high level, but metric, right? You have to track your close rate. Now, a lot of people, they look at this number and they say, oh, it's supposed to be 60%. It's supposed to be 80%. It's supposed to be whatever. But, and don't take my word for it, take Hormozi, right? He has a video going over this exact thing and what your close rate should be. If your close rate, and you have to look at all numbers too, not just looking at your close rate, which we'll get into in just a second, but you want to look at all your numbers because of the fact that if your close rate is 40%, that's good. If you want to raise your prices up a little bit to have some friction, right, and then your close rate goes down to 20%, that's still okay, as long as your numbers are matching everything. What you don't want to do, though, is scale with ads and your close rate goes down and now the numbers aren't matching because you chose to increase your price, increase ads, all these different variables, right? So the thing about scaling too, especially when you're looking at your close rate being like, let's say it's very high and you want to scale, you want to increase your price and all that, make sure that you're looking at all metrics before you do that. So that way the math is always mathing. Like make sure you do that and you're always looking at your bottom line. Now, the formula for the close rate is going to be this, just for you all that don't know. So, and a lot of people actually, before I even get into that, a lot of people mess this number up. So they don't even have the correct formula. But that formula is going to be, you're going to have deals closed, of course. But on top, a lot of people commonly put like total number of calls booked under here. And that's not right. It's people that showed up to the call. So what I do for this is just going to be put calls completed. So close rate comes down to the number of deals closed over the number of calls completed. So the number of people that showed up to the call. It's not about deals closed over book calls, right? So I want to make sure everyone understands that too, because if you're doing that, you're not tracking your close rate properly, okay? So what I will say here as well, like if you have a 40 to 60% close rate, that's good. You're good, and then what you want to do from there though, to continue to scale and continue to charge what you're worth, right? And sometimes when you're having a problem with fulfillment, you also might want to minimize a bit on the front end aspects of what your investment is for people to get started working with you, but you still want to continue to scale. You just raise your price a little bit, especially if your close rate is anywhere from like 40 to 60%, right? How do you know? Raise your price by like 5%, 5 to 10%, and go from there. If not, so and what I say by this is, for me, is like if I was charging someone $4,000 for a service or whatever, I'm going to test out how $5,000 sounds, and then from there go from there. And if it's not working, then I'm going to go back to maybe $4,500. And if that's not working, then I know I got to go back to the original price, and then that's just what it is because that's what the market is telling me. So you always want to test the market out a little bit, and maybe even position your offer differently so that you can charge more, and maybe add in a pillar that doesn't add to your overhead. Think about it that way. But that's just a little bit extra game. Okay, so yeah, close rate's the first number that you want to track. Let's go ahead and get into the second number. All right, so the second number, the second metric, it's going to be your show rate, right? You have to track your show rate because, and I'm going to tell you, and obviously going back to number one, the close rate, if people aren't closing, then that is most of the time, it's a sales problem. But sometimes it can be a marketing problem. What I mean by that is you're probably having misaligned messaging in the ads to where you're not closing people because it's not a real need for those people. So maybe you need to go more in market, quote unquote, more in market with your messaging in your ads. But yeah, that's just a little extra game. Let's go back to number 2, the show rate, right? If people aren't showing up for the calls, this typically comes down to a sales process, something in your sales process that is a little bit off, to where you're not having enough like reminders before the call, or your pre-call SOP, which is something that I always implement. I have a template that I have for all of this. I mean, if you guys want that, just comment down pre-call and I can send it over to you. The full like pre-call template. Of course, you have to adjust to your offer, but it's rinse and repeat for every single offer that I step into and help out, and I leverage it, and it pretty much I just plug it up to the offer, and yeah, but it's pretty good. So yeah, your show rate, you want to have some a pre-call SOP process for that. You want to refine your pre-call SOP. If you're a business owner right now and you have no type of process to where the person books a call, and let's say you have your automated reminders on it, those work. Sometimes you don't need to add more if you have healthy show rate metrics, right? But sometimes, in most cases, especially these days, it's 2026 and me filming this video, you do need to have more things in place on top of the automated reminders to get people to show up for the call, right? And so this all comes down to, to list off a few things, this comes down to you having like automated manual reminders. What I mean by that is having a personal touch to some automated reminders. So yes, you have the regular calendar booking workflows that look strictly like automation, but then you have a hybrid of automated reminders / manual. What I mean by that is saying like you have like, let's say your founders video, which is something I talk about a lot in my other videos, where you have that video is going to go over a personal story, 15 minutes max, of the founder telling them their story and how they got started with X, Y, and Z transformation and why they do what they do today. That helps a lot with people to show up to the calls. Like that final push, it shows like you're an actual human behind, you know, what you're saying, if you don't have a webinar funnel to do that. Also, another video is going to be testimonials, client case studies, things like that. You want to have that in your pre-call process, because no matter how big you are, people still want to see something that you have helped this person or do this, whatever the case is. So you have to have those things. The more you add that, the more people will show up to your call, and it will help your close rate as well too. But how do you properly track your show rate, right? Which is something that I don't really see many people mess up, but I see people mess up. What should my show rate be? They have a lot of questions about what should show rate be, but in terms of this, right, your show rate is going to come down to this formula right here. It's going to come down to show people, so like actually number of people that like calls completed. So calls completed, but we're just going to put shows over booked calls. Let me just, yeah. All right. So show rate is going to come down to shows over book calls. This is going to be, you always want this metric to be, and depending on the offer, but if you're and this is why I say depending on the offer, because some offers, you're always going to have a low show rate. This is a little bit inevitable. And the more you learn, the more experience you get, you will learn this about certain offers. It depends on your offer. Like a lot of times I see like these credit repair and funding offers. Expect for your offer, sometimes they can be around the 60% mark in terms of like show rate, right? And then other offers go for 80%, right? If you have at least 80% show rate, you're pretty good and plus, right? And I mean, if obviously if everyone's showing up for the call, that's great. So what we want to go for is this metric right here. We want to go for 60 to 80% plus show rate, and that formula is going to be the amount of people that showed up to the call over book calls, then of course you get that whatever percentage that is, and that's your show rate. And you want to get this number, 60% to 80% plus for the show rate. Very simple, very straightforward. Let's go ahead and get into number 3. All right, number 3. This is something that I see people track monthly or even daily, but they're not tracking weekly. Don't know why. So this number right here is going to be cash collected, which is also known as CC. So a lot of times I'm talking to people like, what was your double C? What was your CC? They're like, what? So your cash collected, right? So if a person ever say, what was your CC? It's your cash collected. Now, I want you guys to think about this. This is not, especially for you agencies, right? I'm going to go ahead and call you out, but trust me, I'm speaking out of, it's because I care. It's because I care. So this is not the amount that was invoiced or contract value. It's not this, right? We don't care about that. We don't care about that because it's not your actual cash collected. We care about what was the real hard cash number, what amount really came to to that hit your payment processor, right? So like they call this, what was the total amount of real cash. Is very straightforward. So yeah, cash collected is number 3 and you want to track this daily, weekly, monthly, even quarterly, right? And of course, annually. But why I'm looking at this as every week, and I'm not looking at the invoices contract value because those are fake numbers. That's not even real. It's not tangible. You can't take it. You can't do what you need to do. You can't put the amount of number that's been invoiced to your contract value back into ads to scale. But you can take the cash collected, the actual total amount of real cash collected, and put it back into ads to scale, right? So I want you guys to also make sure that if you're not already doing this, that you're tracking your cash collected. You're making sure that you track it weekly, because that's typically what you need to see to where you can say, okay, hey, I'm getting this amount of people show up to my calls. People are closing, but for some reason, we keep getting a bunch of payment plans. We're not getting enough real cash, because why do I have 2 calls getting booked there? I have a 40% close rate. Offer is good, but for some reason, we're getting a bunch of $500 deposits, but we're not getting $5,000, right? The math isn't mathing. And so you always want to look at that too weekly, if not daily, if whatever the case is, but you want to get real tangible numbers on what's going on in your business to where you can see what the bottlenecks are. That example that I told you is such a real thing, especially with agencies, but in general. You're tracking, okay, I got this amount of closes, but because you're not tracking what the cash collected is, you won't even know if you're really making the amount of money that you think you're making, because you're seeing, okay, close, but you're not even making the real money because it's just been deposits or whatever the case is. So this is super important number. It's not really overlooked, but it's something that I wanted to touch on because I see this as a common mistake sometimes. And I want to make sure that you guys have full clarity on everything. Let's go into number 4. All right, so now we're going to get into number 4. Now this is something that I believe a lot of offer owners confuse, and this is because of the fact that a lot of people think I have a sales problem because of the way they're tracking this number or this metric. But in reality, you most likely have a marketing problem, which is why you have that huge gap. I'm going to tell you the common mistake. So most people are tracking this metric when I get into this. They're tracking the CPBC, right? Instead of tracking the CPQC. Now, this is just the way I do it. People might call it different, whatever the case is, but it's just the way I interpret it. This right here, your CPBC, is your cost per booked call, right? Your CPQC is your cost per qualified call. Now, the reason why I'm tracking this number instead of this number is because the CPBC, the cost per book call, is a vanity metric. In reality, let me just touch on this really quickly, actually. It's only a vanity metric if you're not an offer or a business that you want, if you have a high setting process to where it's like you're pushing for just a bunch of volume and your dialing team is just like going crazy with the way that they're spamming leads, you just want to spam your seller's calendar, then okay, this isn't more so a vanity metric, because now that's what you're doing and you've seen that converts the best for you and for your offer. But for most offers, in most cases, they're using their cost per book call and looking at that as, okay, if I'm getting 10 calls on my calendar, right? And the cost to book them, so the cost per book call was $100. Not $100. I basically, let's just say cost per book call is $100, but to get those 10 calls, I had to basically spend $1,000, right, in order to get that. So I spent, cost per book call is $100. I spent $1,000 in order to get 10 calls. So now I'm thinking, okay, cool. So if I'm spending $1,000 to get 10 calls, all I need to do to get more book calls is spend another $1,000, and now I'm going to get 20 calls, right? But why would you want more book calls if they're not closing and if they're not qualified? Now, using the same example, let's just say cost per call was $100, but cost per qualified call was really $250, right? And so if I wanted to get 10 qualified calls booked, which is what you should be going for anyway, more qualified bookings, that way your close rate can be better and your sales team can have a better, you can have a better retention process with your sales team, etc., right? So $250, and I wanted to get 10 book calls, then I really have to spend $2,500, not $1,000. I have to spend $2,500, right? And so that's the difference here. Most people are going after the $1,000, like they're going after this number. They're thinking, okay, I just need to spend $1,000. Really, what you need to spend to get more qualified bookings is $2,500. So this lets you know realistically, a lot of times too, like going just backwards. Most people are looking at it they're like, dang, I'm booking. So this is where I want you to take some accountability if you're struggling with this problem. I'm booking 10 calls on my calendar. Why aren't we closing them? And it's because probably only 4 or 5 of these bookings are actually qualified, right? And so from there, it's not, and that's why in the EOD report, you need to put a section that says qualified call made offer, because now you're able to see how much was your cost per qualified call. But a lot of times people are just looking at this and they're looking at this vanity metric and saying like, dang, like I don't understand what's going on. It's because you're not even giving your sales team enough qualified bookings on the calendar, because you're looking at, okay, I'm spending $100, I'm spending $100, I'm spending $1,000, we're getting the bookings, and that's cool, but if you have no triage process in place, if it's just booking, calendar, closer, showing, or whatever the case is, but you're still going after the wrong metric. And so that's why I stress and I highly encourage you to go after your cost per qualified call versus your cost per book call, because now you're able to see, okay, the problem I'm having right now, the bottleneck, is it a marketing problem or is it a sales problem? What's the actual real bottleneck? Because now you know, okay, cool. If I'm doing 250, I get 10 calls. If I'm 2,500, I get 10 calls. Okay, cool. And if we're not getting a valid return from that, now it's a sales problem. Now you know, right? But I want you guys to go after the right metric. That way you can see real results and you can have real data and be able to track what the real bottleneck is, if that makes sense. Let's hop into number 5. All right, number 5 is my favorite metric to track. I don't know, I really love numbers. I always loved math in school. Anyway, that was a side note. So number 5 is going to be, you probably heard of this before, your CAC. What does CAC stand for? Customer acquisition cost, which can be same thing as just basically the amount of money that it takes you to fully acquire a client, right? Fully acquire a customer, whatever the case is. I'm just going to put here, customer acquisition costs. Now, why this is super important to track? Because if your CAC, if you're getting let's just say you're getting a lot of qualified bookings on your calendar, and you're spending going back to that same example, let's just say your your cost per qualified call is $250, right? And then your customer acquisition costs, let's just say I've seen this, but let's just say your customer acquisition cost was $1,000. You probably want to cut that down in half. Now, this can still be healthy if your ticket price is at a valid standpoint. If when I say this can still be healthy, if your ticket price is at a valid standpoint, if your offer has some type of recurring model, whatever the case is. But I like to keep it like this, preferably. Like, it depends on the offer again, because like I said, it depends on the offer structure. But if your cost per qualified call is $250, you're basically saying that it takes 4 qualified calls for you to acquire a customer. So this, because your closers are gonna call it close the deal, but it's basically telling you like, hey, you need 4 qualified calls to acquire a customer. I like to really stay between a 2x. So I would rather this customer acquisition cost be $500, right? If anything, if it's not 250 and we're not going 4 for 4, I want it to be like at least 2 out of 4, which is a 50% kind of ish close rate. When you think, it's like when you're looking at it from this point, it's not from a calendar standpoint, it's not either. But if you're doing the math like this, that's how I like to stay. I like to say, okay, if it takes you $250 to qualify call, book it on the calendar, okay, cool. Then the actually acquire that calendar, let's say you're picking the 2 qualified prospects, at the very most, you're at least closing one of those qualified people. To me, that's healthy math. I like to steer away from anything like this, especially if it takes you $250 to acquire a qualified prospect. And let's just say I've seen this happen. I'm gonna say something that I've seen happen before. But let's just say your CAC is $2,500. But because of the fact that you weren't tracking this number, you don't even know that you have 10 calls before you get a single call booked onto the calendar. That is absolutely crazy. Like, I'm telling you, like, this is why tracking is so important, because if you're doing all of this and you're not even seeing that my CAC is $2,500 and I just booked 10 qualified calls, why is that happening? And now that is a sales problem. Now you really have to talk to your sales team and say, okay, what are we doing here, right? Do I need to fire my sales manager? Do I need to keep them? Do you need to hire me? Like, what is it? And this is why, like, I'm talking about this, because it's so important for you to actually understand, like, why tracking is super important. So I hope all of this made sense. That's everything. These are the 5 top numbers that you must track as an online coach. Moving forward, you must have at least those 5 numbers that I went through throughout this whole entire video, no matter what, right? If you track those numbers, you'll be successful as a starting point. And then from there, of course, you want to continue tracking more information like your AOV, your average order value, stuff like that, all the good stuff, right? Now, if you guys want help implementing a tracking system to your business, just scroll down below. There's a link right there. Book a call with me or my team, and I will help you out. If you want more assistance into how do I actually, get this into my offer, you want consulting advice from myself, go ahead, scroll down, book a call with me. If you want to learn more how to do this, scroll down, book a call with me, right? And from there, you're going to be successful, right? So hope this guys helps. See you guys in the next video.